So yesterday we learned about the stomach and we saw a few things in the stomach, which I believe that we all went and did further research and are now at a better position of just maybe writing an essay on the anatomy and physiology of the stomach and every process that happens in the stomach. So today you'll just allow me talk about the pancreas. And the pancreas, it basically lies in the posterior end of the stomach. Posterior is a word. It's a biological word that means behind. So yesterday you saw where this stomach essentially is, and I explained where it is. In our abdomen, the part where the stomach is, the left side of our abdomen, just below the ribs, just below the ribs. And so that's where our pancreas also lies. Our pancreas lies below, or rather to the posterior end of the stomach. And so it's very hard to tell. Okay, it's not very hard, but when someone has a pancreas problem or a stomach problem, they might feel the pain on the very same point. And so, unless you know the problems that are related to the stomach, the problems that are related to the pancreas, there's no way you could tell that the pain that your patient is having is something to do with a pancreatic disorder or a stomach disorder. That's why it's very important for us to learn and know these things. So that's where the pancreas is situated, and it begins from the duodenum towards the spleen. The spleen is also just behind the stomach. It's like it's more of a circular, it's more of a circular ball just behind the stomach. So the stomach, as we saw yesterday, I said that in the GI tract, or rather um, in our gut, in our gastrointestinal system, we have we have connective tissues that makes them, and so it's the same to the pancreas. We said that we have cells. Too many cells make a tissue. Too many tissues make an organ, and the organ there is the pancreas. And so, what are some of the functions of the pancreas? As we saw yesterday, that in the stomach we have two types of cells. It's the same to most organs in our body. We normally have these two types of cells. That's the endocrine cell and the exocrine cells. The endocrine cell, it's more of a gland, and I explained what a gland is. A gland is more of a store, or rather just picture it as a pot where something is stored. A pot, there is normally water in a pot. Mostly water is stored in a pot. So a gland is more of a pot, but in this pot there's juices. There are juices, and there are hormones. These particular cells that we are talking about, they secrete juices and hormones. So in the endocrine cells, endocrine simply means the cells that secrete hormones directly to the bloodstream. Directly to the bloodstream. Exocrine cells are cells that secrete juices or hormones to the epithelium layer of our organs. And we explained what an epithelium is. Epithelium simply means the outer the outer layer of of our organs, like the let me just get back to, okay, it's not there in front, but to those of us who are not there, allow me just tell you what epithelium layer is. I believe that's moving fast enough for us to, yeah. So the epithelium layer is normally that covering, that surface layer that covers most organs, and mostly it's the protective. It's the protective part of our organs. In the stomach, the epithelium layer is more of it's more of mucus. It's a mucosal membrane that can be eroded by acid easily. So that's epithelium. So the glands, or rather the cells that produce juices to that area, are called exocrine. Exocrine. Exocrine cells. So in the pancreas, we also saw the endocrine cells and the exocrine cells in the stomach, right? Sindio? Okay. We saw them in the stomach too. If you can see, if in my current slides, let me just see if you guys are seeing my slides, but I really do hope so. Yeah, it's being seen. So we saw that in the stomach we have three types of exocrine glands. We have the mucus, the parietal cell, we have the chief cell, and we saw the gastric juices that are being produced by these three glands. And the endocrine gland, we only saw one, that's the G cell, which secretes gastrin. And gastrin, I didn't mention this yesterday, but gastrin stimulates the production of these juices that we see here, the mucus, um, no, not really the mucus, but the intrinsic factor that is responsible for digesting what? Did anyone go and do research? What does the intrinsic factor, what's it responsible for digesting? Okay, and then we have the HCl that we have this HCl, we have pepsinogen. So the gastrin that is secreted by the G cell, the gastrin that is secreted by the G cell is what helps in, or rather, it's what stimulates the production of intrinsic factor, hydrochloric acid, pepsinogen. Pepsinogen. The intrinsic factor helps in the digestion of the taste. Uh-huh. So that is what we saw yesterday, and it's more of the same making. Um, it's more of the same. It's the same phenomena exists in our pancreas. In our pancreas, we have two types of cells. That is the alpha and the beta cells, which I know I regularly mention, and they're responsible for secreting insulin and glucagon into the bloodstream, and it helps in regulating blood sugar in the bloodstream. Insulin acts more of like a key to our cells, like it opens our cells to receive glucose. It acts more of like a key, and glucagons normally stimulate the production of glucose whenever the glucose level in our blood is down. So it stimulates the production of glucose in the liver so that it can be taken down into the bloodstream. And we have the acinar cell and the epithelial cell um, that are responsible for secreting the pancreatic juice. So what are some of the benefits of the pancreatic juice? We are talking about the digestive system. So we'll talk about the pancreatic juice. Those are the ones we'll talk about them when we are looking at diabetes, when we'll be studying diabetes. So the pancreatic juice, it contains sodium bicarbonate, and in my slides, sodium bicarbonate buffers hydrochloric acid in the stomach. When food gets into the duodenum, we will see that we will see this when we get to the small intestines. The first part of the small intestine is the duodenum, the second part is the jejunum, and then we now get to the ileum. So the small intestine uh, is in three, like it's grouped in three. That is the duodenum, jejunum, and then the ileum. So the small intestine, it acts under an alkaline condition, like the digestion that happens there the digestive juices that are produced and everything requires an alkaline condition for them to digest food well, for them to digest food well. So what sodium bicarbonate simply does, it actually, the food that comes from our stomach that is acidic is changed to alkaline by this sodium bicarbonate. And we have what is known as protease, which help in the breakdown of polypeptides. We have pancreatic amylates that helps to digest disaccharides, oligosaccharides into monosaccharides. These are micro micronutrients. We have macro and micronutrients. Macro are the common ones that we know, the protein, the carbohydrate, and all that. But micro, the small ones are these ones, disaccharides, oligosaccharides, and the others. So that's what the pancreatic amylase helps in digesting. And these things, the end products are really unnecessary to our cells. And so whenever the production of pancreatic juice is hindered, then our cells will start dying because they won't be receiving the required nutrients, because the required nutrients should come to them as a result of digestion. And so digestion is a very critical, it's a very critical thing in our health. Like digestion is more of the foundation of health. If anything affects the digestion of food negatively, then it will always be manifested in poor health. Our health will always be poor if digestion is hindered, if the digestion is affected. Because these things are broken down into simple particles for them to be done what? For them to be absorbed into our cells, into our blood, so that life can continue, so that strength can be given us. So we have pancreatic lipase, and it helps in breaking down lipids into fatty acids and glycerols. And these are very, an example of fatty acids. They are very essential to heart health. They are very essential to good memory. Fatty acids, they're very essential to memory. And so maybe if someone has Alzheimer's disease, maybe one of the things that you could consider is, if if not the if they're not using aluminium products to cook their food, maybe one of the things is their fat intake. The fatty acids are low, the amino acids and the rest are low, or maybe the digestion is hindered in a way. So we have the pancreatic nucleus that breaks down nucleic acids. So the biliary system, and biliary is a term that is used to describe a combination of organs, the liver and the gallbladder. They more of are in the same they are more of contained in each other. So we have certain ducts that are associated with them. We have the hepatic ducts, which one of the hepatic ducts bring blood to the liver. There's one that takes blood out of the liver. We have the cystic duct. We have the common bile duct. So this is the biliary system, and that's the liver. The oval one there is the gallbladder, that is essential in producing bile for the digestion of fat. We have the liver. The liver, we look at it deeply when talking about excretion. When talking about excretion, but here we'll talk about just basic functions of the liver in our next slides. So this is the surface of the liver anatomy. Anterior simply means um, anterior simply means the front side, anterior surface, the front surface. Posterior, I said, it simply means behind. So this one here is the anatomy of the liver. Very beautiful, and I used to eat it in my days of ignorance, and it was so sweet, but not anymore. So, what are some of the functions of the liver? So, we have certain metabolic processes that we'll explain further when talking about homeostasis. We have um, gluconeogenesis, we have glycogenolysis, we have glycogenesis, and the rest. Um, it's all just about glucose, um, balancing of glucose levels in the blood, and storage of glucose, and all that. We'll explain them further. Storage of glucose, balancing glucose in our blood, and also utilizing the glucose that has been used, that has been stored whenever there is no reserve. So we have detoxification and degradation that we'll talk about further. You know, when you take milk and sugar together, then alcohol is normally is normally formed, or alcohol is normally processed in our liver, and so there is to the brain. So there's normally no difference between someone who takes milk with 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 sugar. Like if someone uses sugar freely in milk, there is somewhat no difference between that person and someone who takes alcohol. The only difference is the alcoholic content in it, but it will have the same results in the brain. But we'll discuss all this further. So we have detoxification. Actually, the liver, the liver, the liver is very helpful when it comes to releasing waste in our system. Um, so, um, it filters out toxins and waste, including drugs and alcohol and poisons. So synthesis of plasma proteins, actually, this is what normally gives a color. An example, the synthesis of certain plasma proteins is what normally gives a color to our feces and all that. So we have lipid metabolism. Um, we have the storage of vitamin B12. We have storage of iron. That's why when you want to get the largest the surest source of iron, the most bioavailable. Like if you want iron that is readily bioavailable, like to be absorbed directly into the system, we are normally advised to take liver, because iron normally is stored in the liver. And so what you basically do when you take liver, you're taking you're taking iron that was stored by some other animal for its own function. Well, it's bioavailable to mean it will be synthesized, and it will form part of iron in your body, but you'll be harming your body. Like there are certain things that um, will be harming your body, because the liver, it has a lot of it has a lot of blood, which is not healthful, because the life of the animal normally is in the blood. So we have activation of vitamin D, which we spoke of. We have the removal of bacteria and old red blood cells. We'll talk about the liver very deeply. We'll talk about the liver for a week, hopefully. So excretion of cholesterol and bilirubin. Bilirubin is mostly it gives color to our feces. Directly affects digestion by producing bile, that is in the bile duct. Bile, and we saw what bile is used for. So I really don't know if there's a question until that point. Allow me get back to Google. I don't know if there's a question. Is there a question so far up to that point? Let me see in the chat box. Wow. Someone is saying that they are not hearing me, like my words were not coming through. Is that really true to all of us? Laban, can you now hear me?
Yes, I realized the problem was with my network, so I checked it out.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So, is there any question before we proceed? We'll look at the liver deeply, so there's no need to worry. Because I said if you want to be good at diagnosing disease, then you have to you have to study anatomy and physiology and have everything at your fingertips. And the reason why we won't be giving exams is it's simply because of these exams are not normally not a show of like exam normally just tells how much you've okay, I don't want to say memorized, but how much you've taken to memory, ama memorized over time, ama how much you've read, but it's normally not a show of intellect. Because in exams, mostly you are told, we'll be setting from here to here, so go and read deeply and then come and sit for exam, which really is not a good thing. Assessment should always be throughout. It shouldn't begin and end at an exam, at a single exam or two, or even cuts. I have normally never trusted such cuts and exam. Do I still sit them and do them? But they're normally not effective when it comes to dealing with people, more so in this line of medical missionary work. You need to always have these things on your fingerprint without someone telling you to come read and sit for an exam. So I was talking so that we can look at what is on the screen and then just be aware of it. So I'll move to the next slide. So, what are some of the roles of the gallbladder? Gallbladder, simply what it does, it stores bile. That's the simplest thing it does. Its role is to just store bile, and this bile is normally released to the duodenum for the digestion of a certain fat. I'm forgetting the specific name of this fat, but for the digestion of a fat. So that's simply the function of the bile. And so if someone gets an accident and the bile is mechanically damaged, then there's no way this specific fat is going to be broken. It will be taken out that way through the anus. And so there are normally certain ways bile can be given orally as a supplement. So what are some of the functions bile salts play? By the way, you guys have ever heard of gallstones? Gallstones. We'll know what gallstones are when we'll be talking about the disorders of the digestive system. So the problem normally affects the gallbladder, where passage of urine at times is normally painful and all that. So bile stones play an important role in fat digestion and absorption. That I've said. Excretion of waste products, e.g., bilirubin. We have bicarbonate in bile neutralizes acid in the duodenum. This one we had seen. Bicarbonate in bile neutralizes acid in duodenum. these functions we had seen, and so we can just read them. I'll give you guys a minute to read them so that we can just get familiar with them as we continue. Okay, so I think we can continue. Now on to the small intestines. On to the small intestines. I said that the small intestine is it's um it has three parts. The small intestine has three parts. I believe you guys can see my mouse. We have the first part known as the duodenum. This one here in blue. I believe this is blue. It's not red. So this one here in blue is the duodenum. It's actually the border section between the you guys remember the pylorus section, or rather the pylorus face. We say that the stomach has three regions. I believe you guys remember the pylorus region. So it's the border between the pylorus region and the small intestine. This is the duodenum. And what are some of the things that are digested in the duodenum? 90% of the foods we eat are absorbed in the duodenum. 90%. 90% is absorbed in the duodenum. Very little is absorbed in the stomach, and the highest amount of the digested foods are absorbed in the intestines. And then we have the jejunum, this one, this section here, the jejunum, this section here. That's the second part of the small intestine. And then we have the ileum. And then we have the ileum. Then we have the ileum. So that's the small intestine. So what are some of the functions of the small intestines? Number one, mostly in the whole GI tract, in the whole GI gastrointestinal GIT tract, these four are normally the function in the gastrointestinal tract, in the whole of it: digestion of food, absorption, secretion, motility. But in the esophagus, motility is normally the main function is in the esophagus. Motility is the movement of food. Um, in the mouth, yes, there is a little of absorption that takes place in the mouth. There are secretions, there are digestions that take place in the mouth. In the stomach, there's a little of absorption taking place. There's a lot of digestion. There's a lot of secretion. So it's same to the small intestine. We have digestions. We have digestion, and there are enzymes that are responsible for these digestions. And when an enzyme is used in the digestion of food, then that is chemical. That's a chemical process of digestion. So intracellular, I believe we know what that means. Intra simply means inside the cells. Inside the cells, intracellular. So enzymes are intracellular. Disaccharides and aminopeptidase. Those are the ones that are largely digested in the small intestines. And then absorption. Absorption is completed. Mostly it's done, 90% of absorption is done in the small intestine, and it's completed in the small intestine. Large surface, there are certain things like glucose that are absorbed in the stomach. Actually, alcohol, when someone takes alcohol, um, alcohol is readily absorbed in the stomach more than any other food. That's why it's normally have a very quick response. It's absorbed in the stomach directly into the bloodstream. So we have absorbed that's why taking vinegar is normally not right. It's alcohol, and it will make the blood acidic, and in no case should the blood be acidic. The pH of the blood normally is between 7.35 to 7.45, I believe. 7.35 to 7.45, and in no case should this blood be acidic, and it can never be acidic. If it becomes acidic, then there's normally there's normally um that's where people will now start getting heart attacks and the rest. So but it's very interesting how God has really formed and made us to an extent that the blood can never be acidic. Like, okay, it can, but it's very hard for it to be acidic. Very hard. There are certain things that will make it acidic, but there are responses that will immediately counter that. Because immediately when the blood gets acidic, you can die. So we have an absorption that is completed with this that we'll talk about, and we'll talk about them in the next slides. Let me go to our slides. So this is the small intestine, and we saw the parts of, and in the stomach, we saw that the stomach is where when you cut it, it has layers. We saw 4 layers in the stomach. It's the same to the small intestine. We have 4 layers. That is the mucosa or the mucosal. We have the submucosa or the submucosal. We have the muscle layer, muscularis externa. That's the muscle layer. Where in the stomach we say the muscle layer has it has three types of what? Three types of muscles. But we say that all through the digestive system, the mu- the mus the muscle layer, that is the muscularis. Okay, you guys can help me pronounce that. We say that in the whole GIT tract, the muscles are normally two. That is the longitudinal end. Someone to remind me the other one. The longitudinal end. Okay. Someone to remind me of my the longitudinal end. Okay, we'll continue. So the additional one was the oblique. We have the longitudinal and that other one I'm forgetting. And then the very last layer is the serosum, the serosal layer. So it's the same when it comes to the small intestine. And we'll talk about the circulatory system. We'll know what these lymphatic vessels are. We'll know what these lymph nodes are, where they're located, and we'll see how our Creator has amazingly made us to an extent that whenever there's an infection, there's a way the body actually heals itself. And so, what we need to do is to just boost our body and give it some natural like all we need to do is to just boost our body and to help it fight diseases. We'll see how the body beautifully fights infections through the lymphatic system when talking about the circulatory and all that. So, and finally is the large intestine, and it's really not important to know the transverse, the ascending colon, but for knowledge, we should know. We have the transverse, ascending, descending, and then the rectum. Appendix will study appendix very deeply because there are disorders that affects the appendix. So, what are some of the functions that happens in the large intestine? The physiology of the large intestine. So, physiology, we say the functions. Functions. So, absorption in the large intestine. Absorption happens in the large intestine. Um, it's more of reabsorption of water, reabsorption of bile salts, and there's someone who was raised there, or it was a message. Okay, well, someone was joining. I had some sound from Google Meet, but it's fine. Let me just get back to my slides. So we see absorption of organic substances. We see absorption of certain vitamins produced by bacteria. Actually, in our system, we have more than 1 million bacteria in our gut. And these bacterias in the gut, there are good bacterias and then there are bad bacterias. And if the bad bacterias increase, let me say in number more than the good bacteria, then there'll always be certain disorders in our gut. You'll start having things like halitolysis, that's bad breath. That's bad breath. It could have it can be halitosis, not halitolysis. Halitosis. It's bad breath. It's actually something that trickles down to the large intestines and how we eat what we eat and all that. It's halitolysis or rather blood breath is related to toxicity of the blood, toxicity of the blood. Yeah, toxicity, but we'll study all that more. So we have absorption of organic wastes and all that. Those are some of the functions of the large intestine. So there are three types of vitamins produced in the large intestines. That is vitamin K, and we know how vitamin K, okay, most of us will see anyway. Vitamin K is responsible, or rather it's required when it comes to there are many things that are required when it comes to blood clotting. We have vitamin K, we have prothrombin, um, we have what else do we have? But there are several things that are required for blood clotting. So vitamin K is produced and it's fast fat soluble. It's produced in the large intestine. We have biotin, which is commonly known as B7. It's important in glucose metabolism. So this, when looking at diabetes, this is one of the things that you'd always want to know and how it functions. That is biotin B7, because it's important in glucose metabolism. We have pantothenic acid, that is B5. It's also water soluble and it's required in manufacture of steroid hormones and certain neurotransmitters. We'll know what neurotransmitters are, we'll know what steroid hormones are, but mostly steroid hormones are the hormones that normally makes us active. They're the hormones that, yeah, normally just makes us active and gives us strength and bravery in a layman's language. And then neurotransmitters, essentially they are more of like transmission lines to the brain. An example of a neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is responsible for the moral functioning of our brain. Like it's normally related to morality. Morality simply means bad or good. So when this neurotransmitter acetylcholine is affected by maybe our lifestyle, then our morality will always it will always be it will always be it will always be negative, it will always okay, like it will always be degraded, like will be moral in a way. Yes, acetylcholine. And there are certain things that normally affect the functioning of acetylcholine. An example is arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid, it's an amino acid that mostly is found in meat. That's why when Ellen White says that meat makes us more animal-like, or rather to behave like an animal, it's scientifically also proven because it affects acetylcholine. So that's why it's very, very, very it's very essential for us to avoid such products as meat, for us for us to develop, like for us to be able to live a sinless life, which is possible to live in this world. Maybe someone could be asking, is it really true to live a sinless life in this world? Let's go to Titus. Okay, but before we go to Titus, is it really possible for us to live a sinless life in this world? A life without sin? The Bible says all have sinned and fallen short of his glory. Here you can see Laban has said yes, it's possible to live a sinless life. I also agree with him. But all that will depend on our habits, our lifestyle habits and the rest. Let's go to Titus. Yes, Jesus did it, and Jesus is an example that we are told to follow him. And in Matthew 5 verse 48, he himself tells us to strive for perfection just as his Father in heaven is perfect. I don't know why I'm finding it hard to get to Titus. So Titus chapter 2 verse 12, I'll start from verse 10. Titus 2 verse 12, I'll start from verse 10. Let me just start from verse 11. For the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men. For the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lusts, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in this present world. We should live righteously, soberly, and godly in this present world, looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior Jesus Christ. And so, yes, it's possible, as my two friends have said, to live righteously, soberly, and godly in this present life. That's why Christ died on the cross for us. That's why Christ died on the cross for us. And so this can only be possible by a few lifestyle changes, if at all we can readily follow the divine, if we can readily follow the divine precept that God inscribed from the beginning, the divine precept that he inscribed for us to follow in matters health, in matters the Bible, in matters health and the moral laws, then we can. We saw in Isaiah 7, we didn't read it, but I mentioned it. In Isaiah 7 verse 15, today I really wanted to cover a lot, but not all of us did respond to the question that was posted in the group, and so I decided to maybe just leave the sessions to be as we had agreed initially, from 8 to 9:15, so that the rest can be given as an assignment. So verse 15, we are told that butter and honey shall he eat. Butter can be made from even plants. So butter and honey shall he eat. This is when Isaiah is talking about Christ's food, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose good. And so in our choice of food, we can, from our choice of food, we can be able to do what? So you guys, someone to answer. From our choice of food, from the foods that we eat, we can be able to have victory over sin. So we have the rectum. We have the rectum. Um, there are certain procedures that we'll be doing called
Two.
okay, thank you, brother. So There are certain things that as medical missionaries we are supposed not to be afraid of. There are certain things that we are supposed to know. Mm, an example is enema. There's a procedure called enema, and enema, let me, okay. Enema simply means cleaning the internal parts of your body from the outside. So you can always do this by by taking certain juices into your system, into the GIT tract through the anus, not through the mouth, but through the anus. It sounds gross, but it's very helpful at times. Enema. We will talk about enema and we'll see how it's being done. So you need to know um, the anatomy of the rectum, the anal canal, and the anus for you not to mishandle the patient when doing an enema. And so these are an area that I want us to go and thoroughly study: the rectum, the anal canal, and the anus. So I think that's just all for today's study. We have 10 more minutes to now go to the application. We have 10 minutes for the application. It's now 9. So we can read this summary. I'll give us some 2 minutes to go through the summary. I'll give us 2 minutes to go through the summary. As we go through the summary, if there's anyone with a question thus far, you can kindly raise it. I'll also take um, another round of attendance. There are those who are not yet in, and I was taking the first attendance. I'll take another round. It's very important for us to attend the classes because that's the only way we'll be certified. One of the ways we'll be certified, rather given certificates. If your attendance is wanting, then there'll be no need. You'll have to attend another class again for 90 more days for you to get your certificate. So so from the look of things, it's like there's no. Actually, I said earlier that there's an enzyme that is used to digest lipase, like break down lipase. There's no such thing. Lipase is an enzyme that is used to break down fats. Lipase is an enzyme that is used to break down fats. So I want to ask you guys a question. Have you ever heard about gluten? Anyone who has ever heard about it? So I'll send a letterhead in the group. I want us to go research about gluten and how it's harmful, how gluten affects affects negatively the health of our gastrointestinal system. Gluten is it's a component, should I call it a nutrient? Okay, it's a component in wheat. Yes, go ahead. Yes, Ma'am Beatrice, go ahead. I can see your hand is raised. Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, you are.
Okay. Your internet connection is unstable. I'm told that my internet connection is unstable. Okay, that's interesting. Um, so yes, Ma'am Beatrice, I can see your hand is raised. You can kindly raise your concern. We have 5 minutes to go. I saw a microphone
It's not a
unlocked.
concern. I was saying you asked about gluten, and I was saying I've heard about it. Hello,
Yes, yeah, I'm getting you.
hello.
I'm getting you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying it's not a concern. I was responding to your question. Who has heard about
Okay,
gluten?
okay, it's okay. So let's go do a research on gluten and how it affects the GIT track. And let's go and do a research on this phrase here, leaky gut. Leaky gut. And um, describe what leaky gut it is. Describe some of the things that causes it. And when we'll meet next on Thursday, we'll start from there. We'll look at leaky gut. It's a GIT. It's a gastrointestinal problem that could be related to halitosis, that is bad breath, and then the rest. So go study about leaky gut and some of the things that causes it. Go study about gluten and how it affects negatively the gastrointestinal system. We'll start from there in our next class. And so for today, I wanted to do something small on foods and the GI track, though I didn't include that in my slides. I wanted to do something about irregularity, snacking, and the rest. So, John, I think this is when I'll stop. Okay, I won't stop. So, John, you can kindly, I'll stop sharing so that John can kindly share the testimonies. John, you can kindly share the testimonies. We want to read a few in the testimonies as we finish. I can see we have 2 minutes. I think I have cancels and diets with me here. So we'll go to cancels to the church. CCH. Cancels to the church, page 223, paragraph 11. Cancels to the church, page 223, paragraph 11. CCH 223, paragraph 223.11. 223.11. CCH CCH 223.11. Today I didn't get adequate time to include these quotations in my slides again. but we can take notes. So the quotation simply talks about irregularities in meals and snacking. Snacking, it doesn't mean eating snacks or fast food. Snacking simply means eating between the meals. So what does the spirit of seems like? John, John, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Um,
Hey.
kindly put it this two to three, 18. So it says um, two to three. So you can read God tells us regularity in eating nothing, nothing the snacks and fast foods, those which no confectionery items, food, any kind. This is food of any kind. Yeah, nothing specific. And then if you see of the digestive organs, destroys the healthful stone of the digestive organs. I really wish we had more time. I could have actually on what we've learned, because now we are looking at now the application of what we have learned. I would have that we have the now that we have the scientific background of how the digestive system works and all that, we can really relate to what is happening here. So this isn't clear. So how does it affect the digestion? Someone to kindly help us. Someone to kindly help us. Elisha, kindly help us as I receive this call. You
Okay, well, thank you so much. I believe the question is, how does snacking, ama irregularity in eating, actually is injurious to our system? I think that is the question, Denzel, right? Okay. Before I answer the question, on our assignment, we can also add on how to calculate the gluten index, calculation of the gluten index, and some of the foods that are very rich in gluten. So you can also consider that. Now to answer the question, irregularity in eating. Actually, we've learned about the glands, the GIT glands, and most of these glands are most of these glands secretes the hormones in the presence of food. And so this is what happens. Every gland has like a rhythm on how it should be producing its hormone. Now imagine you eat, then within no time you've eaten again, and so this cycle continues. So one of the effects of irregularity in eating is irregularity in production of the digestive enzymes, and this is very dangerous. Then secondly, as you eat irregularly, you are actually how should I put it? Um, uh, I'm looking for the right word. As you eat irregularly, you are actually I'm forgetting the right word. Okay, fine. Let me just explain on the very first point. So, what is the effect of now irregular production of enzymes? This one will lead to actually production of enzymes when even the food itself. And specific case, for example, this explains why some people are having conditions like, for example, ulcers, because they first experience irregularity in eating. Then what happens? Uh, HCl, for example, the smart production that's even active to reduce one of the reasons. So they are more into this. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know that then. Oh,
Yes,
fine. I was saying,
I've heard
okay,
you.
well,
Yeah, I've,
fine.
I've
Thank you. So on the assignment, we can add how we can calculate the gluten index calculation and the source of gluten foods, and even some of the conditions, the diseases, for example, the celiac disease associated with such conditions.
yes, thank you, Elisha. So I said we have an assignment to do, and the assignment should be up by tomorrow noon. We'll have 2 weeks to do the assignment that I'll send. But for the assignments that I've mentioned, the two that I mentioned, kindly try and do it before our next class. But for the one I'll send, we'll have 2 weeks to do it, I'll specify. So I think that's just all for today, though we've not covered much on the application of what we've learned. I have almost 10 quotations here to discuss, but we'll just stop it at that. I'll put them as an assignment. So someone can pray with us so that we can close. Hesbon, kindly pray with us so that we close our today's meeting. Okay. Trevor, are you at a position of saying a closing prayer? I can see he left. And kindly say a closing prayer. Okay, let's pray so that we can close our today's meeting. Let's believe and pray. Mighty Fortress, we thank you for the gift of time and just giving us the spirit to come here and know our bodies. May you reward us of the time spent, and may you, Lord, help us always keep in remembrance that which we have learned. And as we get into knowing the application of it so that we can understand them more, may you open the eyes of our understanding so that we can be able to tell black from white. Be with us as we go to rest is my prayer, trusting and believing in Jesus' name. Amen.